Hello, this is Eric, and this is In Focus. The title of today's talk is Of Donkeys and Detours. And I know it sounds like an unusual title, but it's kind of an unusual story that we're going to be unpacking today. It's a story of a prophet for hire by the name of Balaam, his donkey, and his aggravation over not getting where he wanted to get. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of times that when things happen, I get truly upset if it gets in the way of what I'm trying to do. And Balaam apparently is no different because he had a situation very similar. So here's kind of a little backdrop. The children of Israel, this whole situation takes place in the book of Numbers, which is the fourth book of Moses, of the 5 books that he wrote: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and finally Deuteronomy. Now, in Numbers, it's called Midbar in the Hebrew, meaning desert or wilderness, because Numbers chronicles the wanderings of Israel through the wilderness for 40 years because of their unwillingness to believe God to deliver the promised land to them. And because they wouldn't believe, because they accused God of bringing them to the land of Canaan for the purpose of killing them, God said, you're going to be wandering around for 40 years until the people who did doubt me are no longer with you, until they die, and then the children will inherit the promised land. So we're getting towards the tail end, and Israel's being brought back around. And on the east side of the Jordan River, there's a couple of peoples, couple of nations. And they're nations of a group of people known as the Amorites, which is one of the people that Israel was told to drive out of the promised land when they would come to conquer and take it over, and they would do under leadership of Joshua. But there's 2 kings, Og and Bashan, and Israel soundly defeated both of those, as recorded in the 21st chapter of Numbers at the end of the chapter. Now, there's a king by the name of Balak, who is the king of Moab, and basically is the same situation as the other 2 kings. And that is, Israel sent message ahead and said, listen, we'd like to pass through your land. We'll take the king's highway. We won't turn off to the left or to the right. We'll stay right on the highway until we pass through your territory. We won't drink anything. We won't eat anything. And even if we do, we'll compensate you for whatever we drink. Like if we stop at one of your wells or one of your oases, you name it, and we'll pay it. We'll compensate you. Well, Og and Bashan, these 2 kings of the Amorites, flat refused to the point of actually sending their armies and attacking the Israelites, and they were able to subdue them. They were able to defeat them and take over their territory on the east side of the Jordan. Now, Balak, who's a neighbor to the Amorites, saw what was going, the king of Moab, and realized that regular military intervention wasn't going to stop these people. He knew that God was on their side. They heard the stories about what happened in Egypt and the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea and everything else. And Balak kind of thought along the right lines, in that he knew this was a spiritual problem that needed a spiritual solution from his perspective. So he gets this guy by the name of Balaam, who is a prophet for hire. And that's where we pick up the story. Then the people of Israel set out and camped in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan at Jericho. So they're on the east side of the Jordan. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw that Israel, sorry about that. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was in great dread of the people because they were many. Moab was overcome with fear for the people of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, "This horde will now lick up all that is around us, as the ox licks up the grass in the field." So Balak, the son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the people of Ammon, to call him, saying, "Behold, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth, and they are dwelling opposite me. Come now, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." So, here we go. A message is sent to Balaam from Balak, saying, "Come curse these people. They're just too much for me. There's too many of them. I've heard what's happened to Og and Bashan. I don't want to be in that group." So what ends up happening is Balak sends some princes and sends them to his house with this message. And Balaam said, "I'll tell you what, let me go talk to God." And he was talking about the one true God. "So let me go talk to God and see what he has to say, and I'll come back to you." And God says to him, "No, I don't want you going with them. You're not going to bless these. You're not going to curse these people because I've blessed them. So don't even waste your time, basically." So he tells these officials, and they go back to Balak. And of course, Balak is upset because, he wants what he wants when he wants it. He's your typical human being. So what he does is he sends even more important dignitaries and princes with an even bigger promise of wealth. And Balaam already heard from God that he's not supposed to go to him, but he goes to him again. Something interesting happens here, and we're going to unpack this a little bit more when we get to that portion of the story. But he goes to God, and I can almost see it like this: Can I please, can I go with him? Please, let me, God, please. And God finally says, fine, go with him. But you're only going to tell them what I tell you to tell them and nothing more. So Balaam goes to him, and he's on. I could just see him just like dancing around like a Jack Russell Terrier, going, I could go, kind of thing. So they set out, and that's where we pick up the story. So Balaam sets out with the princes of Moab. They're on the road. All right, so we pick it up in verse 22 of chapter 22. "But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his two servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, and the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back into the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn, either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled. He was ticked off. And he struck the donkey with a staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, because you've made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you. Then the donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? He said, No. And then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed down and fell on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I love that word. I'm going to take a quick moment out. In the newer translations, you don't see that word. Behold. It's an important word. Whenever you see the word behold, like I'm reading the English Standard Version of the Bible here, and you'll probably see it in the New American Standard, the New King James, and those, the more traditional translations. Because behold has a powerful meaning. It means pay close attention. What you're about to hear is incredibly important. Lean in on this. This is really important. That's what behold means. It means really take note, because what I'm about to relate, or what's about to be related, is really important. So pay attention. So that's why I love the word behold. All that meaning in one little word, behold. You know, I love that. Behold, I have come out to oppose you because your way is perverse before you. All right, your way is perverse before you. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, Go with the men, but speak only the word that I tell you. So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak. Okay, he went on with the princes of Moab. So one question that pops into the mind, and I'll get to the main point, is God allowed Balaam to go, right? He went and saw him a second time. God said, okay, fine, go with him, but only say what I want you to say. So someone would ask, okay, well, why is God angry when he allowed Balaam to go? 2 things. One, God did not want Balaam to go because he knew it was going to happen. We'll unpack that in a couple of seconds here. The second is we get a clue from the angel of the Lord here. And there's a lot of discussion about the identity of the angel of the Lord, which is a really long conversation itself. We'll talk about that one day as the Lord guides. But what I wanted to deal with here is what the angel of the Lord said to Balaam in regard to his going with these princes of Balak. This is, the way before you is perverse. Okay, what does that mean? That means perverse, the word means twisted, wicked. See, we're going to read as we go forward in chapters 23, 24, and 25 that Balak gives the blessing that God tells him to give, which, by the way, is an absolute negative shock to Balak, because Balak brought this guy in to curse, and he's going to give 3 beautiful, eloquent blessings, because what ended up happening is Balak and Balaam go to 3 different places looking at 3 different vantage points, hoping that as he looked down he would see something to curse. And in all these 3 vantage points that Balaam looked down, he found nothing curse-worthy, and he just made these wonderful blessings. And one, of course, is about the coming of Jesus, too. You know, and it's tremendously powerful blessings. And God even said, when talking to the people of Israel, short Moses delivering God's last message from God through him in the book of Deuteronomy, which is literally the second telling of the law, it said, listen, for your sake I turned Balaam's curses into blessing. And that's what he did. Balaam was hired to curse, but he blessed instead. What made Balaam's way perverse that God saw ahead of time is that Balaam was going to advise Balak how to get Israel out of God's favor. And that manifested with a bunch of very attractive Moabite women going down and basically inviting the young men of Israel to their form of a Bible study. Now, if you know anything about Canaanite religious practices, they're highly sexual in nature, and I really doubt that Balak sent unattractive women down to entice the young men of Israel. Come and sacrifice with us, big boys. Ooh, see how we do religion and all that. And then the guys were like, ooh, yeah, okay. And they basically did it, and they fell into idolatry and sexual morality and everything else. And guess what? Now there was something to curse. And it took one of the sons of Eleazar, the high priest, who went in and put an end to it, at least one guy's romp. But the point of the matter is, getting back to it, is that God knew that Balaam was going to lead the people astray. And that's one of the reasons why he said, no, I don't want you to go. And this leads to an interesting discussion as far as it relates to God's sovereignty, as it relates to our free will, and how the two interact. God is completely sovereign, yet at the same time, he gives us the freedom to choose. And that's one of the things that has been debated between Calvinists and Arminians for years. Calvinists believing that everything is determined, and that we basically, those who are saved, are going to be saved regardless. And the Armenians who believe that God has just given us free will, and God's, his predestination is predicated upon the decisions that he knows we're going to make. And it's an interesting discussion back and forth. But God does give us the freedom to choose. And he could have very well took Balaam's life at that moment, but God was testing his people. But I guess before I get too far afield here, I wanted to get into something that the Lord's been dealing with me on, and it's one of my problems. And the thing is, when I get this idea in my head about what I want to do and the plan that I have for anything, I mean, I'll be at work and I'm downstocking stuff, or I'm doing something, I'm working on a project that maybe my supervisor has assigned to me, and I look at the very people who are our lifeblood sometimes, our customers, as an inconvenience, because I have this plan. I have this thing I need to do, and this is the way I'm going to do it, and anything that gets in that way I see as interference, and I get frustrated. I'm sure most of us have those moments from time to time, and we just get absolutely frustrated. So you don't say it out loud, because of course I'm in customer service. I work with the public, and you don't do that. But in my head, I'm screaming, I have this to do, and I get all, especially if there's a time limit. If any time there's like a deadline or something, and I need to get something done on time, I get really spun up. And I'm thinking about Balaam. Balaam wanted his payday. Balaam wanted to get to where he was going to get to. He wanted to do his job. He wanted to get that big payday. He wanted to get that honor from Balak. He just a man on a mission. And now the donkey starts just turning off the road. Said, no, I'm going that way. We're going that way. What are you doing? And it did 3 times. One time it kind of mushed his foot against a stone wall. So all the while he's beating this poor donkey like a rented mule, and beating this poor thing until finally God opens this poor donkey's mouth, and she's, have I ever acted like this before? Oh, no. So, you've had me all your life. Have I ever done this to you? And he's like, no. Then, of course, God opens his eyes, go, oh, not good. And I guess the whole point that the Lord was trying to make to me personally is that I really need to chill out. I remember one time, me and my late wife, we were coming back from a trip. We were on a cruise, and we were in Fort Lauderdale, and we had to get off the plane. And this is an interesting story. We get onto this plane. We're getting ready to fly back to Connecticut. And we're sitting there, and there's this poor baby that like's bundled like that kid from A Christmas Story. I mean, the poor kid's like this, and he can't lower his arms. The kid is wrapped in like 15 layers of clothing. I mean, if you were to drop the kid from a building, he'd probably be fine because he had so much padding. Okay, so we're in the plane, the air conditioning's not on, all right? And the kid's getting more and more uncomfortable, and I'm looking at the poor kid, and I feel bad. It's like sweat's just kind of pouring down this little dude's face. And it sounds like that scene from the movie It Lives. You know, it's like I didn't know where to comfort the kid or do an exorcism, but he was just and it was really unpleasant. So finally, our spot, because several planes have an order of takeoff, when our turn finally comes up, and we power up, and we get going, right? We get going, and the thing it powers back down. And they said, what? What's going on here? And you could hear the entire plane. We're like, well, it turns out that there's a door ajar. I kid you not, there's a door ajar light that comes on. Door ajar light. So we go back around, right? We go back around, and we wait again. And so it's probably another 15, 20 minutes. By this time, everybody's cranky. The kid is screaming to beat the band. But Mom finally gets that, hey, maybe I should remove a couple of layers of clothing. So, he gets that big onesie, like hoodie thing off of him, taken off of him, and a couple other things. So the kid's a little less overheated. And we finally taxi down the runway. Our turn comes, hey, we're finally going home. And then it happens again. Said, yeah, we need to go back to the terminal. What? So when I first got on the plane, there was like a vent immediately to the right-hand side and there's looked like there was condensation or something dripping from the vent. And I didn't think too much of it. So we get back to the terminal. Now we have to walk all the way across the entire airport to get to the next gate where the replacement plane is going to take us back to Connecticut, back home. And this time we're all tired, this, that, and the other, and we basically hoofed it because we had like 15 minutes to get from one side of the airport to the other, and we get to the terminal, and I kid you not, the sign is on the podium, the podium where the ticket taker stands at the gate. Is a truly happy man who can enjoy the scenery of a detour. And the irony wasn't lost on me. The truly happy person who can enjoy the scenery of a detour. So we end up getting there. But before, I had a Gideon moment, because there's a story where Gideon's nervous about attacking this huge group of Midianites with only 300 of his troops. And God allows him to overhear a conversation between two Midianite soldiers who are on watch or on sentry duty, because God said, if you're still nervous, you and your servant go down and just listen to what they're saying. And he did. And this one guy turns to his friend and says, I had this dream of a barley loaf coming down a hill, hitting one of our tents and knocking it over, just flipping it upside down. Oops, see? Just like that. And flipping it upside down. And he said, that could be nothing better than the Israelites over beating us, vanquishing us. So, Gideon got the encouragement he needed. He goes, he blows the trumpet, gathers the troops, and they have the battle. So I had a Gideon moment in that sense because I was listening to two airline workers, because it was the same airline, saying, yeah, it's a really good thing that we didn't take off because the reason for everything was that the engine kept losing power. Okay, so let's unpack that for a couple of minutes. If the door ajar light had not gone on and we actually took off, we could have lost engine power on takeoff and we could have crashed. But because of that detour, because of that engine light, we could not take off. They were able to go back to the terminal and realize that there was a serious mechanical problem with the plane, and every person aboard that plane, including the screaming little one, was saved. And the same thing here. Balaam was so angry about this detour. He's so angry that the donkey wouldn't bring him to his desired where he wanted to be, when the donkey was trying to save his life. The donkey saw the danger, and the donkey took measures to protect herself and the person riding on her back. And I think about what happened at 9/11, in the World Trade Center. How many people, what was happening, them collapsing and thousands of people dying, it was a horrible tragedy in our country's history. How many people were angry when they didn't get the subway in time? Or a kid got sick and they had to stay home? Or something else came up and they couldn't make it to work, and they're thinking about their bills and they're thinking about everything else. And then they watched these towers collapse in the heat, realizing that if these things didn't take place, if these detours did not take place, they would be dead. So, flash forward to me. I could hear God's gentle correcting. He said, listen, I know you don't like being delayed. I know you're task-oriented. I know you like getting things done. But things happen for a reason. And this is why I need to relax. I need to breathe. I need to accept what's happening because it's happening. And instead of freaking out, doing a Balaam, doing what I do sometimes in my head when I'm trying to get things done, just go with the flow in that moment. Trust that God has our best interests at heart, and know that sometimes when you're delayed in traffic, sometimes when you're delayed at home, who knows? God may be keeping us from a traffic accident or something else. God was trying to keep Balaam from creating a huge problem, because when he advised Balak about how to get the Israelites to stumble so God would turn against them, he was condemned for doing it. I mean, he heard from God. He knew what God wanted to do. He did what he wanted to do anyway, because he ran right through God's stop sign. He advised Balak to lead the children of Israel astray, which now Balaam is a byword for any false prophet or who misleads God's people. Read the letters to the churches in Revelation. So in the 2nd and 3rd chapter, you'll see that. But at the end of the day, at the culmination of all of this, is sometimes we have to just relax and enjoy the scenery of our detours in life, and know that while they may be inconveniences, they're not bad for us many times. That's my rant. My name's Eric. This is my rant. And as I say at the end of pretty much all of my video blogs, if this has been a blessing to you, please feel free to like it, because the more people who like it, the more will see it. The same thing with sharing. And if you want to share a situation where God has put a detour in your life so others may be blessed by it, interact through the comment section. And I leave you now with this blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face to you and give you peace. In other words, beloved, shalom. I love you. God loves you. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the scenery of those detours.